everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing my review for The Last of Us Episode 5, Endure and Survive. I've always remembered that from the games. This is also a 420 review. Also, I swear I do this every time, but for anyone that might be watching that's new, I will do spoilers and stuff for the game story in the spoiler segment, kind of like my movie reviews. So spoiler free for the beginning, it'll just be going through the full episode, so you need to at least know the episode, but no spoilers for the game until we get to that actual part. Connections, differences, stuff like that. Honestly, the main one, which was really the same as before, the villains actually have names, they have stories, they have backgrounds. It's a different tie to what happens as far as, story-wise with Henry and Sam. Like what their story was leading up to that moment is very different in the game versus the show. It was interesting. My huge complaint last episode was everything seemed super fast, where it was like, they mentioned a whole lot of stuff that happened, like they took out Fedra, did this, did that. And I'm like, they would have had to have done that a long time ago. And that seemed weird for how the story was, because it's like, this is the dude that got her brother killed. Do you think that they'd be all over that? Because why would you wait? Which is exactly what I was thinking. Like, well, why would you wait? They didn't wait, which means they couldn't find them for 11 days. And it just seems like a little weird to me. Like, I know obviously in the last episode, that's when Joel comes along, he kills some people. And so Kathleen, I remembered her name, I hope, she kind of turned that against Henry and Sam, where it was like, oh, that's them. And so now, we're going door to door. But they showed during the Fedra thing, it was like they were looking for them already. And it was like, she seemed like she never gave it up, yet somehow they were looking for 11 days. And not once did she just convince people when everything's fine. I mean, they reference in the episode, literally nothing is happening. They killed all the people during the Fedra stuff. There's nothing else. There's probably, a few conspirators here and there, but they killed everybody else that was a traitor, which is also a really great addition to the story. The informant stuff, I was like, that's really cool. So they killed everybody, and it's been like 11 days and they couldn't find them. Like that was their only thing to even do until Joel came along. And it just made it even weirder for me, where I was like, it seems odd that they've been hunting for him this long, and the whole point of her character is that she is like just driven mad by like trying to find the killer, the guy that ratted out her brother. And I find it very odd that it took 2 people being killed for her to do that over 11 days, considering the character that she is. Like they kind of tease it, the first time we meet her, it's like she's trying to talk and this and that. It's like, okay, I'm pissed, and so she kills the guy. It's like, all right. And then it was like, hey, let's give up looking at the tunnel and stuff. That's horrible leadership. She's just driven by bloodlust. And yet it was 11 days before she like told them or forced them to be like, go door to door to get these people. That's all they had to do. They weren't doing anything else. And I was like, that seems very odd. Like, obviously I'm sure they're doing like a little stuff here and there, but burning the bodies and moving them, like the whole point of her even saying it in the flashback was like, is he your 9th priority? She got like serious with him, and it was like just after they had this giant victory, and yet it was 11 days, and like at no point did they just go door to door. Like, I know the place was secret, but they found it in the last episode because they were finally going door to door. And I'm like, if that was such a huge deal, why didn't she do that from the very beginning? It just, me personally, I don't know why, like that's just where it went, but I was like, that was my main issue with the last episode, because I'm like, that seems like a lot of time, and yet she's still looking for Henry and Sam. And then they show it, and I was like, 11 days and they couldn't find them. And all they do, like clearly he knew their pattern, so they were right there. And I'm like, that seems so weird. Why wouldn't they have done the day-to-day stuff or door-to-door stuff, I mean, within those 11 days? Why did they need to kill someone? But the whole point of her character is she's like so driven mad. She knows he did it to protect his little brother, and she doesn't care. But it took 11 days for her to finally be like, all right, now let's go door to door. Like, I know she had the people behind her, but they already were. So it just seemed weird to me. But aside from that, which is the new thing, still love the episode. I mean, they took her out in the end. She doesn't get her revenge. She does have a really funny line, and it would have been really funny if Henry reacted this way. But she was like, kids die all the time. And I was like, in that moment when I was watching, I was like, it's not smart, but he could have been like, and so do adults. And then that would have been his argument. Horrible argument, but I would have laughed so hard if he said that, because I'm like, so do adults, and then just be like, get over it. But obviously that wasn't his character. He regretted what he did, but he had to do it. And of course they make that giant connection with Joel and Ellie, and it's like, okay, you're not her dad, but you're somebody's dad. And so I like the way they handled that, and just that connection and build up of their relationship, and them trusting each other, because it was like, hey, I know the city, you know, yes, I was an informant, and even Joel was like, I don't work with rats. I was like, okay, that's cool, because like I said, that wasn't really in the games. You didn't really get to have enough time with that sort of stuff. And I guess technically speaking, it could have been just about the same in the game. I mean, they have a decent chunk of dialogue. There's a lot of stuff, you know, obviously with it being the game, they say like a million lines. So there's a lot of stuff they could have done that, but they changed the story to make it, you know, a deeper connection with the city that they were going up against. I personally don't think it was really needed, because I didn't particularly like the villain as much, which is unfortunate, but it's like, yeah, I was perfectly fine with what we got in the game. And that actually leads to one of my least favorite things, was when they went to the school, and I was curious how they were going to do that. And that one's a huge difference, because it's just like that one room, and then it's like, all right, we'll stay here for a minute, and they have a great conversation during that. But there's a whole story to that room, which I highly recommend if you haven't already like jumped on the game because of the show. That's definitely one of my favorite like somber moments of the game. Like I always love that part, and it's a really interesting part of the game where, you know, just a couple little things happen, kind of building the trust between these two teams. And it was like, it was such a great moment, and it was just like, boom, it was just this room, and then it was like, oh, you know, probably failed and somebody got infected, whole place died out. And it was like, in the game, there's like a full story for that chunk, and it's huge. It's actually a decent part of that story. That was always my favorite part, just kind of going through that school. So I wish that we got more of that. I wish that they got attacked when they were actually down there. I was, you know, they saved obviously all the action for the end, but that was also part of it. Like, you do fight during that segment of the game for like half a second. But there was so much there, and I was like, oh man, I was looking forward to that. And they also didn't do like the one thing, great story, all this stuff. And maybe if I liked the episode more, I wouldn't harp on it as much. But because they spent so much time with the villain, aside from the scene when she was like in her house where she's like, I know he wanted me to forgive them, that I actually really loved. I was like, that was like 100%. I was like, I love that. But the stuff she does isn't like 100% epically evil. But that was like an epically evil moment. I was like, okay, that I actually kind of appreciate that. It's a villain that knows they're a villain. And, you know, like, having played the game, and even just assuming with the show, I probably would have been like, yeah, everybody's gonna die. But the way it was handled, I was like, all right, that scene I loved, but just all in all, didn't love it so much. So them having never done the scene with Sam where I was like, they gotta use the fact that he can't hear as a suspenseful element to the story. They never touch on it at all. And I was like, that's severely missing considering what we got with the villain, where I'm like, I didn't care much for that. And I feel like a big, you know, considering I knew what was going to happen with those characters, I was like, that would have been a great like horror set piece, you know, a lot like the clicker stuff, but just more frantic, because they could have done that with them running around, but maybe that would have been super cliche or something. I don't know. I personally think they could have done a great job with it. So I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, they didn't utilize, you know, that moment with that character. And it was just like, dang, that really sucks. I was looking forward to that. Just from a horror perspective, I love horror. So I was like, they got to do a cool, intense sequence, but they went with the crazy action sequence. And I'm not going to pretend I hated it, because I didn't. It was amazing. We got to see the bloater, which apparently the bloater, as well as a bunch of the other infected, were actual people coming out. Like, the bloater is a real suit. And that's very unfortunate, because I 100% thought it was all CG. Like, the suit looks completely CG. You know, I'm sure obviously some of the people coming out of the ground were CG, but 100% of them look CG during that scene. So I was like, man, that sucks. I never would have known that. And I don't know if there wasn't a ton of CG enhancement, or if there was a little too much, or, you know, what the case was. But it was like, it's cool to know that, but in the moment, it didn't hit like, holy crap, they got real people, because none of that looked real at all. And so that's really unfortunate, because I'm like, I wish that came through when I first saw it, especially being in the horror genre. Practical is always like one of the coolest things. So it was unfortunate that it looked that way, because I'm like, I even saw other reviewers say that, where it was like, oh, it looked totally CG. And I was like, wow, that like blew my mind. They spent like $500,000 on that suit, or something insane. I'm pretty sure it was like $500,000. And I'm like, the whole thing looks CG in the moment, and that's unfortunate. But hopefully, you know, maybe we'll see a bloater down the line, and they can kind of do less additional effects to it, or maybe the sequence will be different. But that was unfortunate. I just want to kind of give a shout out to all the people that did that. So I'm sure it was great work. I'll check out all the behind the scenes stuff soon. But it was just unfortunate in the moment you couldn't see like, oh, that's practical. So I was like, ah, man, everything looked 100% CG, but it still looked cool. I love the sequence. It was just like, oh, that's always like kind of heartbreaking to hear that, where it's like, the people's work didn't really get noticed. So I wanted to mention that in case you guys were curious or just didn't know that. Fun fact. So despite it being a lot of actual people looking CG, all that aside, it was a great sequence. People were being torn apart. They do the bloater kill from the game. And it was like, wow, they killed Tommy with the bloater kill from the background. It's like exact motion and everything, and obviously it's blurred out because I've seen it up close. If you want to play the game, I assure you, you can see Joel have his head ripped open up close, and they, it's not real far away, it's not blurry. You're gonna see it. It's gonna happen. I can promise you that. But interesting moment. I was like, that was pretty sick. Everyone's just being torn apart. They do an epic thing with a young girl who's a clicker. They didn't have kids in the game, so that was a great little sequence. I was like, it was short and simple, but that was really sweet. I was like, okay, that's definitely a great addition to the series as well. You would assume it's out there in the world, but it wasn't something they really dived into with the actual game. So it was great to really see it. I was like, that was a cool little moment. And of course, we get to the end. I honestly didn't think that anything was going to change. The only thing I thought was maybe we get 2 episodes. Excuse me. Maybe they come along with them for just like another segment, or at least another episode. It could have been like maybe the first 10 minutes and then they die, and it's just like, dang, you're stuck with that for like the beginning of an episode. But it was like, all right, they decided, nah, it's ending here. They do it. And it was like, okay. It was sad, of course. I like the way they changed it because Ellie, of course, being like, hey, my blood's medicine. That was actually cool. I was like, okay, it's sad because I'm like, of course, it's not gonna work. And I'm curious how many people watch this that didn't play the game, or in general, were like, I wonder if it works. So what's gonna happen if he's cured, at the end. So it's like, I wonder how many people actually thought that could happen versus what actually happened. But it was a cool change for her to actually talk with him at the end, because I don't think they do that in the game at all. I don't think he even tells anyone, actually. So I think that was a huge difference, where it's like they don't have that moment. He just hides it, and unfortunately it doesn't take long. So the sequence kind of does play out the same when it comes to once Ellie wakes up and stuff, and then she gets attacked and they fall out of the room. And man, it's such a good moment in the game, and they did it perfectly in the show. And it was so messed up, but it was like, this is a really well done scene. And Henry gets the gun, and he's holding him up at first, and then Joel is about to move and he shoots at his feet, but he's just frozen. And it's like he shoots at the ground because he's like, you can't, it's my brother. Shoots at the ground, and then he's just like, holy crap. And then he ends up saving Ellie. And it's like, he obviously doesn't know she's infected or immune or anything, but so to him it's just like, I have to stop it. And he shoots his little brother in the head, and it was just like that slow moment. I was just waiting for it because I'm like, I can't imagine. I've seen a lot of the the thumbnails for people reacting. I'm just like, that personally, I always thought is more of a shocking death than even Sarah's death. Like, obviously that's the the big emotional beat, but that's the one that always sticks with me. Like, as far as like the game is concerned, Henry and Sam is the thing that really comes to my, like, the tunnel sequence and just the way that ends. That's the thing that always stuck out to me most. That, and of course, when we get to winter, I'm gonna be pretty hyped. But those 2 moments for sure. So it was really interesting. Just like, man, I can't imagine what it's like not knowing that's about to happen. And it's just like even worse, because it's like, even if you assume it's like, oh man, they're gonna kill, another kid is gonna get killed off, and then his brother has to do it, and it's like, that's really tragic. And then it's just like, man, he can't shoot Joel and Ellie, but he doesn't know what to do, and like, you probably don't expect that to happen. And he puts that gun to his head, and he's gone. And once again, I think in the game you do actually like see the full sequence of him being shot. They don't like cut to Ellie's face. But it was just a crazy moment. And it was just sad, and it was just Ellie being like, all right, well, time to just like harden up. And she's getting like closer and closer to that part of just being like Joel, where it's like, oh, this is why he's done bad things. Like, you can kind of see where that might lead you. But that was interesting. It was just tragic, but it was definitely a great way to do it. Just the sequence, it really does kind of play out exactly the same at the end, but it's so well done. It was just like an emotional scene. Like, even just watching it again, I was like, man, especially because I haven't played the game in a super long time, it was still very fresh, like kind of seeing it, actually seeing it play out, because like, I know exactly what happens. I know why it happens and how it ends, but like actually seeing it done out again after such a long time, like, it still had a hit on me. And I was like, man, that's so... It's so just like sudden in that moment. It's like, it's really a good like hit piece for the very center of the story. So can't wait to see what they do with the rest. We're officially more than halfway through the series now. Obviously winter is coming up. I feel like winter could be like, they can't do it, but I feel like that could be 3 episodes in itself if you really want to do it. And I think it's going to be 2. I think they're going to do Left Behind, because I think we would have 4 episodes left if I'm not mistaken. And that would be next episode could be Left Behind, or they could do winter, then Left Behind in the middle, and then winter. They have to do the college. I forgot about the college. So I guess do the college. They're just shortening that. That could be like 5 to 10 minutes. Like, I really want to see like a lot of Winter and David, because it was so good in the game. I want to see like a buttload of that. So if we can get like an episode and a half of that, that'd be fantastic. I'd love that. Then boom, you get Left Behind. You do Left Behind right before cut up into pieces. I don't know. And then we have the finale. The finale is only like 43 minutes. So we'll see how that plays out. But I'm excited to see how they end it. I definitely want to see. Wow, I forgot about a very specific sweet moment that happens at the end of the game. I completely forgot about that moment, and I'm very curious how that's going to play out now. Forgot about that one. That's interesting. We'll see what happens. Would love to know your thoughts on this, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it. God, favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. What do you guys want to see coming up as far as elements from the game? I think there's really not much I can really think of. Like, they've kind of passed over so much at this point. I'm wondering if we'll actually see anything come back, because technically they did like kind of the hotel and stuff. They go through that entrance, they do the stuff with the bellhop, so it was like that was their moment, but that's like a whole chunk of that game. So they cut that down to like you pass through a walkthrough and you get the funny joke bit, and then that's it. So we don't really see a lot from the hotel. They move kind of the big moment of that, which is Ellie saving Joel. They move that to kind of the Kansas City portion. So I am curious how things are going to play out as far as like kind of the accuracy moments. Like there's a couple of things that happen as far as like the college is concerned, like their mode of transportation changes, and like there's a couple of different elements of how all that stuff kind of goes in line once you hit like fall and winter. It's like I'm very curious how exact they're going to be with a lot of those sequences coming up. Like, what are we gonna unfortunately miss out on? But they seem like they really care, so we might get a lot of it, because there's so much kind of in the later half of the game that I really want to see. And who knows, we still might get that upside down thing, because they could totally combine that with what happens at the very end, or what happens. I forget that we're like in the spoiler segment, so at this point, if you've been listening, I'm spoiling a bunch of stuff for the game. But I like what they have with the college. They could kind of tie those two moments together, where he falls for the trap, shoots upside down or whatever, survives a couple clickers or something like that, and then they could still do it where the rope snaps and that's how he falls and like impales himself, and they could combine those two moments together. So maybe we'll get that. I know a lot of people wanted the upside down sequence, so they could easily put those two together. Like it could kind of be a trap sort of situation, and he actually gets wounded by the trap. So we'll see what happens. But we got the college, we got college, and then the injury, and Left Behind is actually officially being shown. Like so we're gonna get that. So it'll be interesting to see like if they do it exactly like it was in the game, because in the like full story beat, it's as soon as Joel is knocked out, you go straight to the mall before you encounter all the stuff with the hunches and everything. So they might actually do it that way. So I'm curious if we'll see her actually go to the mall and all that stuff, or if they'll just play it as a flashback, considering that would be a lot of just Ellie by herself. But they could do it, Ellie and the hunter, so that could be how they do it, and it's just an Ellie episode. I'm excited. Also, I just remember it was the first thing that I thought of, and I swear this is the end of the review because it's already long enough. The first thing I thought of when the last episode ended, the next big piece should be Ellie actually fighting with Joel during the sequence, pretty much actually from the hotel, when you get out and she gets the sniper rifle, and then you fight by yourself and she gives you cover fire. I think that's the next big scene out of the games. So I'm really hoping we actually get that, because they haven't had their fight moment. They have to put that in there. So I think we're definitely getting that in the next episode, because that's like one, that's like a core element of the whole story, was them bonding more. And then it's like, this is our survival bonding moment. So I think that's in the next episode. It would have to be, unless they save that for later, in which case I have no idea what the next episode could be. But either way, would love to know your thoughts. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Sorry this was a super long one. Also, I stream, super short plug, check it out if you like, links in the description below. But thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in some other random video. Maybe I'll be high there too.
You hungry? I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I'm hungry. You hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. Like I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Like I'm Shaggy. Man, I'm hungry. Man, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Yeah, man. You hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry.